The stagecoach wheels kicked up dust as it rolled to a stop outside Sweetwater, Texas, in the sweltering summer of 1875. Jillian Grayson stepped down, her once pristine wedding dress now travel-worn and smudged with dirt from the 3-day journey back from Abilene. Her cheeks burned with humiliation as she collected her single trunk, refusing to meet the curious stares of onlookers who hadn't expected to see the town's most recent mail-order bride return so quickly and certainly not alone. "Need help with that trunk, miss?" asked the stagecoach driver, his weathered face showing a hint of pity that made Jillian's spine stiffen. "No, thank you. I can manage just fine," she replied, her voice steady despite the tightness in her throat. She hoisted the trunk herself, ignoring the whispers that followed her down the dusty main street. 3 weeks ago, she'd left Sweetwater full of hope, heading to marry a cattle baron who'd chosen her from a mail-order bride catalog. Now she was back, returned like damaged goods with a letter pinned to her valise explaining that she was too headstrong, too opinionated, and far too fierce to make a suitable wife. The boarding house where she'd stayed before her departure loomed ahead, and Jillian paused to gather her courage. Mrs. Higgins would surely take her back, but the questions, the looks of sympathy or worse, judgment would be unbearable. She had exactly $27 to her name, enough for perhaps 2 weeks of room and board before destitution would force her into domestic service or worse. "Well, look who's back in Sweetwater." Jillian turned to find Owen Irwin leaning against the hitching post outside the general store, his hat tipped low over his eyes. The tall cowboy was watching her with an intensity that made her clutch her trunk tighter. "Mr. Irwin," she acknowledged with a curt nod, determined to maintain what little dignity she had left. "Didn't expect to see you back so soon." His voice held no mockery, just a statement of fact that somehow made it worse. "Yes, well, sometimes expectations disappoint us all," she replied, attempting to move past him. Owen pushed himself off the post, easily falling into step beside her. "Let me carry that trunk for you, Miss Grayson." "I don't need your pity, Mr. Irwin." "It's not pity I'm offering, madam, just common courtesy." Jillian hesitated, her arms already aching from the weight. Her pride demanded she refuse, but practicality won out. "Very well." Owen took the trunk with ease, his strong hands making light work of what had been a struggle for her. They walked in silence past the saloon and barber shop, each step punctuated by sideways glances from townspeople who'd already begun to speculate on her return. "I suppose the whole town knows?" she finally asked. Owen's expression remained neutral. "News travels fast when there's not much else to talk about. And I imagine they're all delighted to know that Jillian Grayson was too wild to tame," she said bitterly. "That made him stop walking." "Is that what happened?" Jillian's chin lifted defiantly. "Mr. Hargrove found me unsuitable." Apparently, a wife who questions his business dealings and suggests improvements to his ranch operations isn't what he had in mind when he sent for a bride. A ghost of a smile touched Owen's lips. "Sounds to me like Hargrove couldn't handle a woman with a mind of her own." "Most men can't," she retorted. "Some men," Owen corrected, "value fire in a woman more than obedience." Their eyes met briefly, and something unspoken passed between them before Jillian looked away. They'd reached the boarding house, and Mrs. Higgins was already standing in the doorway, her plump figure silhouetted against the interior light. "Well, well," the older woman said, crossing her arms. "Look what the stagecoach brought back." "Good afternoon, Mrs. Higgins," Jillian said formally. "I was hoping my old room might be available." The landlady's eyes softened slightly. "As it happens, it is, though I don't imagine you'll be staying long. Not many prospects for a woman in your situation in a town this size." Jillian felt her face grow hot. "I have some savings. I'll pay in advance." "I wasn't suggesting charity, girl. Just stating facts." Mrs. Higgins stepped aside to let them enter. Owen carried the trunk inside and up the narrow staircase to the small room Jillian had occupied before her ill-fated journey. He set it down at the foot of the bed and straightened, his tall frame nearly touching the low ceiling. "Thank you, Mr. Irwin," Jillian said stiffly, her hand already on the door, ready to close it behind him. Owen didn't move immediately. Instead, he studied her with those intense blue eyes that seemed to see more than she wanted to reveal. "You know, Miss Grayson, my ranch could use someone with fresh ideas." She blinked in surprise. "Pardon me? I've got 20 acres and a struggling cattle operation. Not much compared to Hargrove's empire, but it's honest work. Could use someone who knows their way around figures and isn't afraid to speak their mind." "Are you offering me employment, Mr. Irwin?" "I'm offering you an opportunity. $10 a week plus room and board. You'd have your own cabin, small, but private." Jillian narrowed her eyes, suspicious. "Why would you do this?" Owen shrugged, the movement accentuating his broad shoulders under his worn shirt. "Because good help is hard to find, and I suspect you're smarter than half the men in this town put together." He stepped toward the door. "Think about it. I'll be at the Rusty Nail until sundown if you're interested." With that, he tipped his hat and left, his boot steps echoing down the hallway. Jillian closed the door and leaned against it, her mind racing. She'd come west to escape the limited options for women in Philadelphia after her parents died, leaving her with debts and no prospects. The mail-order bride catalog had seemed like a solution, a chance at security and perhaps, eventually, affection. She'd never expected to find herself back at square one so quickly. Owen Irwin's offer was unexpected. She'd met him only briefly before leaving for Abilene, remembered him as a quiet, somewhat intense man who kept to himself. People respected him, though he wasn't wealthy like some of the other ranchers. His small spread north of town was said to be modest but well-maintained. Working for a single man, living on his property, it would raise eyebrows. But the alternative was watching her meager savings dwindle while enduring the town's pity and judgment. At least on Irwin's ranch, she'd have purpose and independence. By the time the sun began to set, painting Sweetwater's buildings in shades of amber and gold, Jillian had made her decision. She changed from her travel-stained wedding dress into her one remaining everyday dress, a practical blue cotton garment that had seen better days. She repinned her hair, washed her face, and made her way to the Rusty Nail. The saloon was already busy with the evening crowd, cowboys from nearby ranches, locals looking to escape the heat, and a few travelers passing through. Jillian ignored the sudden hush that fell as she entered, her eyes scanning the room until she found Owen at a corner table, nursing a whiskey. She walked directly to him, aware of every eye following her progress across the sawdust-covered floor. "Mr. Irwin," she said, standing before his table, "I'd like to accept your offer of employment." Owen gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Have a seat, Miss Grayson. I'd prefer to remain standing. This isn't exactly a proper establishment for a woman alone." His mouth quirked slightly. "Seems to me you've already scandalized the town just by walking in here. Might as well sit and discuss terms properly." Reluctantly, Jillian sat, her back straight as a ramrod. "Like I said, $10 weekly, plus room and board," Owen continued. "In exchange, you'll help with the accounts, correspondence, and general management of the ranch operations. I've got 2 hands working for me, brothers named Martinez, good men, but they don't read or write much English. And what makes you think I know anything about ranch management?" Jillian asked. Owen leaned forward slightly. "Because you told Hargrove how to improve his operation, and it made him mad enough to send you packing. That tells me you've got a good head for business and aren't afraid to use it." Jillian couldn't help the small smile that tugged at her lips. I merely suggested he was overpaying for inferior feed when there was a better supplier in the next county, and that his method of rotating grazing lands was inefficient. See? That's exactly what I need. Someone who sees problems and fixes them instead of just following the way things have always been done. He finished his whiskey and set the glass down. Can you ride? Yes, though it's been some time. Good. We'll leave at first light tomorrow if that suits you. Jillian hesitated. Mr. Irwin, I should be clear about something. I'm accepting a position as your ranch manager. Nothing more. If you have other expectations, Miss Grayson, he interrupted, his expression serious. I'm offering you honest work because I need help running my ranch. Nothing more, nothing less. Your reputation will be safe with me. She studied his face for any sign of deception but found only straightforward earnestness. Very well. I'll be ready at dawn. The following morning, Jillian was waiting outside the boarding house when Owen arrived with 2 horses. Her few possessions were packed in her trunk, which he secured to the back of his own mount. Ever ridden astride? He asked, holding the reins of a gentle-looking chestnut mare. No, but I'm willing to learn, Jillian replied, eyeing the horse with determination. Owen nodded approvingly. That's Penny. She's patient with newcomers. With his help, Jillian mounted and arranged her skirts as modestly as possible. The position felt strange and exposed compared to the side saddle she was accustomed to, but also more secure. They rode north out of town, the morning sun warming their backs as Sweetwater faded behind them. The landscape opened up into rolling grasslands dotted with mesquite and oak, the horizon stretching endlessly before them. After the confined spaces of Philadelphia and the stifling atmosphere of Sweetwater, the open country felt like freedom to Jillian. It's beautiful, she said almost to herself. Owen glanced her way. That it is. Most folks see Texas and think it's nothing but emptiness. They don't see what's really here. And what's that? Possibility, he said simply. They rode in companionable silence for nearly 2 hours before the ranch came into view. It was modest compared to the sprawling operations Jillian had glimpsed on her journey to Abilene, a sturdy main house built of timber and stone. A barn, corral, and several outbuildings clustered together. Beyond them, cattle grazed on the surrounding grassland. It's not much, Owen said as they approached. But it's mine, free and clear. You built all this yourself? Jillian asked, impressed despite herself. With these 2 hands and a lot of stubbornness, he confirmed. Started with nothing but the land 5 years ago. As they rode into the yard, 2 men emerged from the barn the Martinez brothers Owen had mentioned. They were middle-aged, with weathered faces that broke into welcoming smiles when they saw Owen. Miguel, Luis, this is Miss Grayson, Owen introduced them. She'll be helping manage the ranch. The men nodded respectfully, though Jillian caught the curious glances they exchanged. Your cabin is this way, Owen said, leading her toward a small structure about 50 yards from the main house. It was built for my mother, but she passed before she could come out west to join me. The cabin was simple but clean, 1 room with a bed, table, 2 chairs, a small stove, and a washstand. A window overlooked the prairie, framing the endless Texas sky. It's perfect, Jillian said sincerely. Owen nodded, seemingly pleased by her reaction. Get settled in. We'll meet at the main house in an hour to go over the books and I'll show you around the operation. Left alone, Jillian unpacked her few belongings and washed away the dust from their journey. As she changed into a fresh dress, she caught herself smiling. For the first time since arriving in Texas, she felt something like hope. The ranch books, as it turned out, were in complete disarray. Owen had been recording transactions in a haphazard manner that made it nearly impossible to determine profit from loss. Jillian spent the first 3 days creating a proper ledger system while Owen watched with equal parts amusement and admiration. "You've got a real talent for figures," he commented on the third evening as they sat at his kitchen table, oil lamps casting a warm glow over the papers spread between them. "My father was an accountant," Jillian explained. "He taught me from childhood, saying a woman should know how to manage money even if society didn't expect it of her." "Smart man, your father." "He was," she agreed softly, "though his investments weren't as wise as his teaching. When he and my mother died of influenza 2 winters ago, I discovered we were deeply in debt." Owen's expression was sympathetic without being pitying. "Is that why you answered Hargrove's advertisement?" Jillian nodded. "It seemed the most practical solution. I had no family, no inheritance, and limited options for respectable employment. A husband with means offered security, if not love." "And now?" Owen asked, his voice quiet in the lamp-lit room. "Now I have employment that uses my skills and respects my intelligence. That's more than many women can claim." She gathered the ledgers, suddenly aware of how personal their conversation had become. "I should retire for the night. We've made good progress." Owen walked her to the door. "Good night, Miss Grayson." "Good night, Mr. Irwin," she replied, suddenly conscious of how his tall figure filled the doorway, silhouetted against the lamplight. The days fell into a rhythm. Mornings, Jillian worked on correspondence and accounts while Owen and the Martinez brothers tended the cattle. Afternoons, she often rode out with Owen to inspect the herds or fences, learning the practical aspects of ranching that couldn't be gleaned from books. Her riding improved quickly, and soon she was comfortable enough to gallop across the open grassland, the wind in her hair and the vast Texas sky above. It was during one such afternoon ride, about 3 weeks after her arrival, that a sudden summer storm caught them far from the ranch house. Thunder rumbled ominously, and within minutes, the sky opened up in a deluge. "There's a line shack about a quarter-mile east," Owen shouted over the downpour. "We can wait it out there." They urged their horses forward, the rain stinging their faces as lightning flashed across the darkened sky. By the time they reached the small wooden structure, they were both soaked to the skin. The line shack was little more than a one-room shelter with a small stove, a rough-hewn table, and a narrow cot. Owen quickly got a fire going while Jillian wrung out her sodden hair. "You're shivering," he observed, concern evident in his voice. "I'm fine," she insisted, though her teeth chattered betrayingly. Owen rummaged through a trunk in the corner and produced a worn but clean shirt and pair of trousers. "You need to get out of those wet clothes before you catch your death. I'll step outside while you change." "In this downpour? Don't be ridiculous." Jillian took the offered clothing. "Turn your back." Owen obliged, facing the wall while Jillian quickly changed, her fingers fumbling with the unfamiliar buttons of the shirt. The men's clothing was too large but gloriously dry. "You can turn around now," she said, rolling up the sleeves and pant legs. Owen had removed his own soaked shirt and was bare-chested, water droplets still clinging to his tan skin. Jillian felt her face flush and quickly averted her eyes. "Your shirt," she said awkwardly, gesturing to his discarded garment. "Only had the one spare," he explained, spreading his wet shirt near the stove to dry. "Don't worry, I won't catch cold." They sat in uncomfortable silence for several minutes, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the rain hammering on the roof. Finally, Owen spoke. "Tell me something about Philadelphia." Grateful for the distraction, Jillian described her childhood home, the bustling streets, the shops and theaters, the changing seasons. Owen listened intently, occasionally asking questions that revealed his own curiosity about the world beyond Texas. "Have you always lived in the West?" she asked when she'd exhausted her descriptions. "Born in Missouri, came to Texas after the war. Fought for the Union, though that's not something I advertise around here." You were a soldier? Owen nodded, his expression growing distant. Enlisted at 18. Saw things no man should see. He paused, staring into the fire. After it ended, I couldn't go back to my parents' farm. Everything felt too small, too confined. I needed space and sky. And you found it here, Jillian said softly. Found purpose too. Building something from nothing. His eyes met hers across the small space. What about you, Jillian? What do you want to build? It was the first time he'd used her given name, and it created an unexpected intimacy between them. I wanted security, she admitted. But now I think I want more than that. I want to create something meaningful, something that's mine. Like your accounting system? He asked with a small smile. She laughed. Perhaps something a bit more substantial than that. The rain eventually slowed to a gentle patter, and the lowering sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light through the shack's single window. Their clothes were mostly dry, and they changed back, Owen stepping outside this time despite Jillian's protests about the mud. As they rode back to the ranch in the fading light, something had shifted between them, a new awareness, an unspoken connection that made Jillian both nervous and exhilarated. The following weeks brought new challenges as they prepared for the fall cattle drive. Jillian proved herself invaluable, negotiating better prices with the buyers in advance and organizing supplies with efficiency that impressed even the skeptical Martinez brothers. She was no longer just the woman who kept the books, she was becoming essential to the ranch's operations. One evening in late August, Jillian was returning from the chicken coop with a basket of eggs when she heard voices from the barn. Owen and someone she didn't recognize. Curious, she moved closer. $50 an acre is more than fair, Irwin, the stranger was saying. Hargrove's offering it because he likes you, not because your land is worth it. Jillian froze at the mention of Hargrove's name. My land's not for sale, Peterson, Owen replied, his voice hard. Doesn't matter what price Hargrove puts on it. He needs this water access for his herd. You're being stubborn for no reason. I've built something here. I'm not giving it up because Hargrove wants to expand. Word is you've hired that mail-order bride he sent back, Peterson said, his tone insinuating. That why you're being difficult? Trying to impress a woman? There was a sudden scuffling sound, followed by a thud. When Owen spoke again, his voice was dangerously quiet. Get off my property, Peterson. Tell Hargrove my land's not for sale. Not now, not ever. Jillian quickly retreated to her cabin, her mind racing. She hadn't known Hargrove was trying to buy Owen's ranch. The implications troubled her deeply. The next morning, she confronted Owen as they rode out to check on a section of fence that needed repair. Were you ever going to tell me about Hargrove's offer? She asked without preamble. Owen's expression darkened. You heard Peterson yesterday. Yes, and I want to know if my presence here is causing problems for you. Hargrove's been trying to buy me out for 2 years, Owen said, guiding his horse around a rocky outcropping. It has nothing to do with you, but it could complicate things. If he thinks you hired me to spite him, I hired you because you're smart and capable. Owen interrupted. What Hargrove thinks doesn't matter to me. It matters if he makes trouble for you. I know how powerful he is in this region. Owen reined his horse to a stop, turning to face her fully. Jillian, listen to me. I don't care about Hargrove or his money or his influence. All I care about is this land and the people on it. His eyes held hers intently. And right now, that includes you. The sincerity in his voice made her heart beat faster. Owen, before she could continue, the sound of approaching riders interrupted them. 3 men on horseback appeared on the ridge above them, and Jillian recognized the center figure immediately, Harold Hargrove, his expensive suit and polished boots incongruous against the rugged landscape. Well, well, Hargrove called as they rode down to join them. If it isn't the happy couple. Hargrove, Owen acknowledged coldly. You're trespassing. For now, Hargrove replied with a smirk. His gaze shifted to Jillian. Miss Grayson, you're looking well. Ranch life seems to agree with you more than civilized company did. Jillian lifted her chin. Mr. Hargrove, I see you still confuse wealth with civilization. Hargrove's expression hardened. Still sharp-tongued, I see. Tell me, Irwin, does she criticize your cattle operation the way she did mine? Every chance she gets, Owen replied evenly. Difference is I listen. My profits are up 15% since she joined me. Hargrove's eyes narrowed. Peterson delivered my message? He did. My answer hasn't changed. Perhaps it should. Times are getting harder for small operations like yours. Droughts coming, prices are falling. Smart man would sell while he can. Smart man knows what's worth fighting for, Owen countered. Hargrove studied them both for a long moment. Interesting partnership you two have formed. Almost seems like fate, doesn't it? The woman I rejected finding her place with the man who refuses to sell to me. He adjusted his hat. I wonder what the good people of Sweetwater would think about Miss Grayson's living arrangement here. Jillian felt a cold knot of fear form in her stomach. Her reputation, already precarious, would be destroyed if Hargrove spread rumors about her and Owen. Careful, Hargrove, Owen warned, his hand moving subtly toward the pistol at his hip. Just making an observation, Hargrove said with false innocence. No need for threats. He turned his horse. Think about my offer, Irwin. $50 an acre won't be on the table forever. They watched in tense silence as Hargrove and his men rode away. Once they were out of sight, Jillian let out a shaky breath. He'll ruin me in Sweetwater, she said quietly. We don't need Sweetwater, Owen replied. Everything we need is right here. The encounter with Hargrove cast a shadow over the ranch. True to his word, rumors began circulating in town about the nature of Jillian and Owen's arrangement. When Luis Martinez returned from a supply run, he reported that people were talking, speculating that Jillian had traded one man's bed for another's. The injustice of it burned in Jillian's chest. She had worked tirelessly, maintained perfect propriety, and yet her reputation was being destroyed by a man's vindictiveness. Worse, she feared she was becoming a liability to Owen, giving Hargrove another weapon to use against him. One evening in early September, as summer's heat began to give way to fall's gentler warmth, Jillian made a difficult decision. She found Owen in the barn, brushing down his horse after a long day's work. I need to leave, she said without preamble. Owen's hand stilled. What? Hargrove won't stop. He'll use me against you, poison the town against both of us. I can't be the reason you lose everything you've built. You're not leaving because of gossip, Owen said firmly. It's more than gossip. It's your livelihood, your standing in the community. Owen set down the brush and turned to face her fully. Jillian, do you know why I offered you that job the day you returned to Sweetwater? She shook her head. Because I saw something in you that day, a fire that matched my own. When you stepped off that stagecoach, head high despite everything, I knew you were someone who wouldn't be broken by setbacks. He took a step closer. And every day since then, you've proven me right. Owen, let me finish, he said, his voice gentle but insistent. This ranch was nothing before you came. Just land and cattle and a man working himself to exhaustion trying to hold onto a dream. You've made it a home, Jillian. You've made it a place worth fighting for. Jillian felt tears threatening and blinked them back. I care about this place too. That's why I can't stay and watch Hargrove destroy it. He can't destroy what we've built unless we let him. Owen reached for her hand, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. Unless you leave. The touch of his hand sent a current through her that she couldn't ignore. In the months they'd worked side by side, something had grown between them, something deeper than friendship or professional respect. "I don't want to go," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then stay," he said simply. "Stay and fight with me." Owen's eyes held hers, and in them she saw not just determination but something else, something that made her heart race and her breath catch. "People will talk," she said weakly. "Let them." His thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand. "Jillian, when Hargrove sent you back for being too fierce, he did us both a favor. Your fire isn't something to be tamed, it's the flame of my life now. The light that guides everything I do." The words hung in the air between them, a declaration that changed everything. Jillian felt the walls she'd built around her heart begin to crumble. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying I love you," Owen stated plainly. "I've loved you since I watched you march into the Rusty Nail with your head held high, defying every soul in that place who thought they knew your worth." Jillian's breath caught in her throat. "I never expected this," she whispered. "I came west looking for security, not love. Sometimes we find what we need instead of what we're looking for," Owen said, stepping closer until they were inches apart. "I need you, Jillian. Not just for your sharp mind or your way with figures. I need your spirit, your courage, your fire." Jillian felt tears spill onto her cheeks. "I love you too," she admitted, the words releasing something that had been building inside her for months. "I think I have since that day in the line shack when you spoke about building something from nothing." Owen's hand cupped her cheek, his touch reverent. "Then stay. Not as my ranch manager, but as my partner. My wife, if you'll have me." "What about Hargrove?" she asked, though her heart had already decided. "We'll face him together. Two stubborn people are harder to break than one." Jillian laughed through her tears. "Is that a proposal, Owen Irwin?" "The most heartfelt one you'll ever receive," he replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "Marry me, Jillian Grayson. Make this ranch our home, this dream our future." Instead of answering with words, Jillian closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his in a kiss that spoke of promises and possibilities. Owen's arms wrapped around her, strong and sure, pulling her against him as though she were the most precious thing in his world. When they finally parted, both breathless, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "Is that a yes?" "Yes," she whispered against his lips. 1,000 times yes. They were married 2 weeks later by a traveling preacher, with the Martinez brothers as witnesses. The ceremony was simple but meaningful, held on the highest point of the ranch as the sun set over the Texas prairie, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Hargrove continued his campaign to acquire their land, but his tactics found no purchase against their united front. When he attempted to cut off their access to the cattle market in Sweetwater, Jillian negotiated a better deal with buyers in the next county. When he tried to turn the bank against them, Owen's spotless payment record and Jillian's meticulous books proved more persuasive than Hargrove's influence. By the following spring, their ranch was thriving. The methods Jillian had suggested, better breeding stock, improved grazing rotation, diversified crops, had increased their profits substantially. They hired 2 more hands and expanded their operations, becoming a model that other small ranchers began to emulate. Word spread about the success of the Irwin Ranch and about the formidable partnership at its heart. Visitors noted how Owen and Jillian worked as a seamless team, each complementing the other's strengths. They observed how Owen looked at his wife with unabashed admiration, and how Jillian's eyes lit up when she spoke of their shared vision for the future. One evening, as they sat on the porch of their home watching the sunset, Jillian's hand rested protectively over her slightly rounded belly, where their first child was growing. "What are you thinking about?" Owen asked, his arm around her shoulders. "How strange life is," she replied, leaning into his embrace. If Hargrove hadn't sent me back to Sweetwater that day, if you hadn't been standing outside the general store, if you hadn't been too fierce for a man who couldn't appreciate your fire, Owen added with a smile. Do you ever regret it? Taking on a mail-order bride reject and all the trouble that came with her. Owen turned to her, his expression serious. Jillian Irwin, you are the best decision I ever made. Your fierceness, your intelligence, your heart, they're the foundation of everything we've built together. She kissed him softly. And you, Owen Irwin, are the man who saw value in what others rejected, who understood that a woman's strength isn't something to fear but to cherish. As the last rays of sunlight faded from the Texas sky, they remained on the porch, two stubborn souls who had found in each other not just love, but a partnership of equals, a rare and precious thing in a world that seldom recognized a woman's fire as the gift it truly was. The flame that had nearly consumed Jillian's hopes had instead become the hearth that warmed their home, the beacon that guided their future, and the light that would inspire their children and their children's children for generations to come.